Well, he's done it. The mad lad's finally done it. He's finally just going all out. He's just doing it. He's actually making a video about shortwave radio. Never thought I would have seen the day. Well, in all honesty, this video is going to talk about that, but I want to cover it on a more broader range, understand? To jump right into things, I suppose, we all have things in life, of course, we do in our free time. Some people, they call them hobbies, they call them exclusively hobbies. I like to call them hobbies or pastimes or really just things that you like to do, because when you use the word hobby, to me it kind of conjures up a very specific image. Like it makes it sound like it's something that is very specialized. Like, yeah, my hobby is building, ships in a bottle, if anyone still does that. Or, my hobby is, collecting baseball cards. Not that there's anything against that, it's just when you use the word hobby, to me it just strikes up an image of a very certain, particular type of thing. I always like to use hobbies or pastimes, they're really the same thing. It's something that someone does that gives them solace or contentment that they do in their free time. That, it's something that people look forward to. It's something that people do for fun. And that differs for everyone. Some people, yes, building models and constructing things could be their hobby. For others, collecting baseball cards can be a hobby. For others, a pastime, or even it could turn into a passion and even a lifestyle. For instance, art, music, video making. As a matter of fact, as odd as it may sound, I started this YouTube channel almost as a hobby. It was something that I had the motivation to do. It was something that I found fun to do, so I decided to do it kind of for fun as a pastime once every week. That's why actually this channel got named the Report of the Week. Back in 2011, almost 7 years ago, I was just doing these videos, one per week, but it kind of started out as a hobby. A lot of people, when it comes down to doing what you like to do for fun, and I'm not talking about, the extreme cases, I'm talking about things that, say you like to paint, right? You like to draw. You like to listen to shortwave radio. You like to play video games. You're into vintage fashion. Whatever it is, whatever your interests are, your hobbies are, your pastimes are, always saddens me when you get some people that are very unappreciative of those things. When I sometimes talk about shortwave radio and sometimes listen, they say, put the old radio away. What are you listening on to that stupid thing? Why are you wasting your time on that? Go do something worthwhile instead of doing that. And while the people who might be saying that, they may fill their own time with, whatever it is. They might be coin collectors. They might, have they might be aficionados in a certain type of music. They might play instruments, might play video games, whatever it is. I never look upon what other people do in their free time with any sort of, I guess, disgust or outright disinterest. I know certain things might not be for me. For instance, I myself, I'm not a big gamer. I'm not really big into video games. I might play the occasional computer game every so often. But in truth, I'm not a real big gamer type of person, but I never go out and scold and chastise those who do so, just because I don't. Because I understand that sometimes doing those things gives a lot of the participants a certain happiness, a certain solace, a certain contentment that perhaps they otherwise wouldn't have. And if people have found that thing in life that kind of gives them that happiness, something that makes their free time worthwhile, I support it by all means, as long as it's not hurting others. It always disappoints me when people, they go around and they try to, try to just go out and demean others just because of their interests and because it's not like how theirs are. That's something that I'm always a little disappointed of, and something I kind of wanted to get off my chest right off the bat, because that was really what gave me the motivation to do this video. we all have our different hobbies and pastimes and interests. And in this video, I also wanted to kind of share what one of my big hobbies is, and that's shortwave radio. Now, it's something I'm sure, at least if you have a little bit of a frog in my throat. Not a literal frog, I don't think. Well, maybe. I hope not. I really hope not, but maybe. That should be better. There we go. All right. We're just going to go through it. There we go. That one, that got it out. That dislodged whatever that evil thing was. Anyway, if you've watched enough of my videos, you know I've talked about it. You know I've referenced it. You know I've brought it up. Shortwave radio, right? You might have even seen the memes where I kind of, I might be sitting there reviewing the burger and I'll pull out the radio and I'll be tuning around and then they'll add the audio for some certain, from something that I tuned to accidentally or whatever. But you might have seen me talk about shortwave. You might have heard me mention it, promote it even. But really, what is shortwave radio? Why am I interested so much in, a radio? Something that maybe you might use for, an alarm clock to wake up, or maybe something you might just put on the background for music, or not use at all. What's so interesting to it, and what is shortwave radio specifically? Well, I know, just like if you think about your hobby, your interest, right? Something that you spend a lot of time doing, you could go on and on and on about it. You could talk at great length about it, I'm sure. I can do the same with shortwave radio, so I'm going to try not to be too long-winded here, because there's certainly many other opportunities for me to be with that in terms of shortwave, so I'm going to give a very brief explanation of really what it is. The fun thing about shortwave radio for me is, you know how with AM radio, especially at night, you could hear, certain signals from farther distances away. An AM transmitter during the daytime, just the way the radio frequencies kind of react with the atmosphere. During the daytime, an AM frequency might only cover, maybe a part of the state, but then as the sun sets, that frequency and that station just goes out a lot farther. I remember here in Florida at night, I can turn on the AM radio in the car and I could listen to stations from New York. Shortwave is kind of like that. Except these signals, they kind of sound like AM radio signals, can travel much, much farther. I'm not talking hundreds of miles, I'm talking thousands of miles, tens of thousands of miles. And as a result, there's high-powered shortwave radio stations all around the world. There's stations, of course, in the US, in Canada, even a couple in Mexico, Cuba, pretty much all countries. North Korea has shortwave radio stations. There's a couple, not a lot anymore, but a couple in Russia, plenty in China, India, Iran, many places in Europe. There's stations in Germany, France, UK, etc., etc. You get the picture. And these stations, they broadcast, an eclectic mix of programming to a worldwide audience. They broadcast world music, they could broadcast world news, interesting perspectives. Sometimes you get some crazy stuff, like some crazy, full-blown propaganda, which could be fun to listen to, to hear such a different perspective. You could hear interesting music shows. You could also hear some talk music programs, etc. And that's one thing that I like about the medium. You could kind of turn on the radio. It's a medium with many technicalities and really a lot of mental exercise as well, because sometimes you have to really hunt around on the radio dial for some of these stations, but it's fun for me to do. It's fun for me to turn on the radio, hear this programming, which yes, you could hear it online, but I personally think it's interesting and easier even in a sense to just turn on the radio and with the spin of a dial hear these shows that one may otherwise not be motivated to look up online. And the other thing that I really like about shortwave radio is the distance involved. And again, I know that this isn't going to appeal to everyone, but there's something about this medium, to me, that just gets to me, where I might be sitting here in Florida with just this, handheld portable radio, outside listening, and there I am tuned into a station that's being transmitted from 10,000 miles away, if not more, say it's in Madagascar, which there are stations I hear, It's being broadcast from over 10,000 miles away, and here I am being able to listen to it like it's just a local station. I just think there's something really cool about that. I like the community that's involved in shortwave radio. I like the shows that I hear. And it's just a lot of things that appeal to me in terms of that medium. Just like with whatever it is that might interest you. Some people it just won't connect with, it won't click, some people they just won't get it. It's just not for them. That's fine. Nothing's for everyone. But there might be those things with your interest where you say, it's something about this that, maybe I can't fully describe it, but I just like the way it is, something that makes it fun, something that makes it enjoyable, something that maybe gives it a certain type of thrill and enjoyment. That's kind of how that is with terms of shortwave radio. Of course, you could hear fun stuff like numbers stations, they're still around, they still exist. Pirate stations, as I said, all sorts of broadcasters. Of course, the medium has its good and its bad, and you kind of have to filter through it a little bit, but overall it makes for a fun experience. As a matter of fact, here I am sitting here, kind of blabbering on, giving this, example of it. I could just go out and kind of show you with the radio right now what we can pick up. So here, let's take a look at this. Alright, so with the flash turned on, here's the setup. Radio there. And I have this wire attached, which can be serving as a big, long, fancy antenna. Not perfect, but it works. So now let's see what we can hear.
I told the counselor about my childhood, my exposure to pornography, and my...
Además, aquí hay otro factor que hay que tener muy en cuenta. En el caso...
That's China Radio International. They're a pretty good station.
Last love. He who loves loves best. 通常来说呢，左小鸭们是那些笑得最会、笑得最好的人。Yeah, she feels like an ugly duckling in her teen, but she wastes no time learning all sorts of skills, very hardworking, in her quiet way.
Actualización sobre la detención del opositor.
This station is broadcast from the U.S. government to Cuba. You could kind of hear their jamming transmitters from Cuba in the background.
Pero todavía está detenido en el vivac de Calabazar, en La Habana. Bueno, Jacqueline...
Didn't want to keep it on that long, but that's a cool music station. This one's a fun catch. It's a low-powered station out of Mexico City, so it's kind of neat that it made it over here.
El reino húngaro. Este castillo está actualmente en
Actively aborted human fetus. These fetal kidney cells, which are called
Hey, as you rolled into the station, you could hear all the people.
clerks and persons. The rest have to go home. And this, friends, has been Radio Havana, Cuba's editorial comment for today. In Havana, I am Alberto de Pérez. Cuba has rejected it.
And it goes on, but this is just a quick example of some of the stuff you could hear. And none of these stations are 24/7, so you turn on your radio at a different hour, you're going to hear a whole different slew of stuff every time. We end with WWV, the Atomic Clock, out of Fort Collins, Colorado. So as you can see, that was kind of an example of some of the stuff that you could hear. But of course, it's more wide ranging than that. It comes down to many things that could influence it in terms of solar activity, where you might live, etc., etc. There are times you could pick up so many stations. I remember there was a time I was scanning around, I was picking up all of these shortwave radio stations from East Africa, from Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan, Eritrea, that I had almost never heard before. And it was so cool to be able to hear these stations, that barely make it in. And they were just coming in so strong. It was so much fun to hear that. Then there's other nights or even some parts of the day I'm scanning around and I hear some crazy, absolutely raving, talk show host or whatever I have no interest in listening to. Scan the dial, just something else I'm not interested in. And that's that. It always varies sometimes, but more often than not, I can kind of scan around and find something that's of interest to me in terms of shortwave radio. One other thing that kind of, I guess, has made me committed to the medium in a sense is also the way that I found to incorporate this YouTube channel with shortwave radio. Not only do I sometimes talk about shortwave in videos or feature a little segment in a review where I'm listening to the radio. As a matter of fact, I do my own show that is broadcast on shortwave radio. Yes, believe it or not, you could pick up this radio and at the right time and frequency you could turn it on and you could hear me on it. It's kind of crazy to describe it so bluntly as so, but that is the case. There's some stations in the US that broker their airtime at an affordable rate, and it had always been a dream of mine to kind of do my own show on shortwave because it reaches a unique audience, it gets out there, it reaches people in parts of the world who literally have no internet. Might be in places so rural that there's just limited electricity, no internet, might be heavily censored, might live in such poverty that all that they can afford is a radio. And yes, they might listen to AM, FM too. Also might listen to shortwave. It's actually been proven in many parts of the world, such as Central, South America, the Caribbean, Middle East, Africa, Asia, etc., that there are large numbers of people who still listen to shortwave radio for news, for entertainment, and for other points of view. And it's a way, it had always been a dream of mine to kind of get my own show out there, just share a couple thoughts, have some fun, and get my content out there to an audience that I would not be able to reach on YouTube. And that dream came true about 2 years ago, and then full time a year ago, I was able to get my show on some shortwave stations, and now it goes out every Thursday and every Sunday to many corners of the globe. It goes out to South America, Europe, the Caribbean, all of North America, Central America. It's even been heard as far away as really South Asia, Southeast Asia. I heard from someone in Uzbekistan once. And I'm able to utilize this medium that not only I listen to for fun, but I also am able to incorporate it into this YouTube channel, do my own radio show, 1 hour a week. It's relayed on these shortwave stations. It's 1 hour of talk, some music too, to hopefully provide a new audience with a few thoughts, a few points of view, and maybe some entertainment at the same time. But it's a lot of fun to do. It's a real pleasure to do, and with that note, I suppose in conclusion of it all, I would always recommend, if you're interested, you could give it a listen. It's something that I try to promote, I suppose, so often because it's something that I'm passionate about. It's something that, is really, as I said, it's a big pastime of mine. Something that I find interesting and fascinating and truly is viable in the sense that there are listeners out there and it's technologically sufficient. And it's something that I always, I say if you're interested in it, give it a shot, dip a toe in. A lot of people actually, they kind of start out in the medium. They kind of get an inexpensive radio to listen to my broadcast on. From there, they start spinning the dial, they hear some other stuff, and sure enough, some people have found a new hobby to pick up. That's how I've gotten into some other hobbies myself. That's even how I kind of delved into the medium of shortwave radio. Back in 2012, when I was kind of doing some research and someone recommended I look up UVB 76 and the Russian numbers stations, and here I am a few years later doing a radio show on that very same medium, which is pretty crazy to look at in retrospect. It's crazy. It's really all how I can describe it. On a final note, one last thing that I like about shortwave radio is some of its technological advantages. I remember it's an example I bring up many a time, but when Hurricane Irma hit the region of Florida back in last year, actually, it wiped out a lot of communications. Power was gone, internet was gone, cell service was gone, TV was gone. A lot of local AM FM stations, they were either on lower power because their power was knocked out, or they were off the air completely. How the heck did I stay in touch with things? How did I know what was going on? Not only in the immediate vicinity, but also in the world around me. And this radio was such a huge help to me, it really was. Not only does it come with shortwave, comes with AM, FM as well, which is much better, should I say, than your boombox or alarm clock. But I was able to stay in touch with regional news through whatever stations this radio could pick up to a better degree. And I was also able to tune into some shortwave stations, hear about how the hurricane impacted the Caribbean, how things are looking like in the U.S., what else is going on in the world, you know? So there's many things about the medium I enjoy, and just as, I always encourage you to kind of share your hobby and promote it to those who are interested. That's kind of what I'm doing with mine. Just wanted to make this little video talking about my hobby and interest, shortwave radio. And really, you have nothing to be ashamed of when it comes to your own interests, when it comes down to your hobbies, things you do in your pastimes. And if people ever try to demean you or make fun of you for the things that give you happiness and you enjoy doing in your free time, shame on them, ignore them, just keep on moving onwards and forwards. Thank you for watching this, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, the Report of the Week. If you want any more information on this radio show, or if you want to get a shortwave radio, I can give you a few recommendations for some inexpensive models. You can send me an email, vorwinfo@gmail.com, or you could also check for some additional information in the description and pinned comments. Again, thank you for watching, take care, and I'll see you again with another video soon. That's all.